going to turn it over to Carol. Many of you know her from these webinars. Maybe you see her as she's your therapist, but she's out of our Murray office. She's awesome, and I'm going to let her take it away.
Thanks, Heather. Yes, it's me again. Yes, emotional intelligence. And yeah, so Heather I think I sent her about 5 handouts. So make sure you get those or email me. My email's on here, carol@blomquisttel.com. There's some, and I'll go over them. There's lots of different little handouts that can go with this emotional intelligence class. And I decided to do it in part 1 and part 2. There is just so much. This is like my favorite thing ever. So emotional intelligence has to do with understanding the connection of your emotions also. So part 2 will go deeper into that connection. First, we just have to understand what emotional intelligence is, meaning what's our emotions and where do we find them and how do we, manage them? How do we, there's going to be lots and lots of stuff on that. And this is just basic. And I also go into a little bit of emotional coaching. So about probably, roughly statistically, maybe 90% of you have children. So there is part of that's in here. And I've sent that in some handouts also. So you can just do some emotional coaching and emotional intelligence with your children. And also I've already done an emotional coaching webinar, which is already on YouTube. So you can always just check that out and listen to that if you didn't see that. There's emotional coaching for teens. So there's already 2 that's on there that you can just watch on your own. So let's get started. Like I said, part 1, we're going to, we always have this on our PowerPoints here, just understanding your benefit. If you do have the benefit, it's free, it's confidential. We have video and phone also. Hopefully we'll be in-house soon. We have 24/7 crisis line and these free classes. Okay, so educational. This is just educational part right here. So emotional intelligence, EI, what is it, and what we're going to be covering. So Daniel Goldman, and by the way, if you've never watched these webinars, all of my references and books are in the back of this PowerPoint. So their books and everything I talk about hopefully are there. So just know that. So Daniel Goldman is a founder of emotional intelligence. He wrote several books on it. So his 5 pillars are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills with emotion. So what we're going to cover in part 1 of this, we're going to identify emotions in self and others. So just identifying feelings, emotions, understanding and processing those secondary emotions. So understanding what secondary emotions are, because that's the key. And then using those social skills with your emotions, emotional coaching also. The second part is how we regulate those and develop and unlearn the past. So that gets deep. I'm not going to go into it too much, but what we have to do is, what that means is we have to develop our emotional intelligence, but in order to do that, we have to unlearn what past emotions mean to us, because they're stored in the body in a memory. Our body remembers emotions, and it's stored as a memory in the body. So that's the thing. So sometimes we have to unlearn those past emotions in order to say, oh, let's write a new story to that emotion. So emotions are past chemicals. Stepping into the unknown is judgment on the past. That's all we got, right? We have judgment on the past of what happened with this situation and how that affected me emotionally. So when you do, choose to change it. So when you do go into that, choose to change it. That's unlearning. That's what that means. And that's this quote. If you can't see my screen, I try to remember that some people can't see the screen. So as I'm going through these, this PowerPoint, if you can't see the screen, then bear with me, but I don't read it word for word on here, but I just kind of skim through this. So this is what emotional intelligence is: the ability to find awareness, manage, and then apply skills to assist in relationship, self, and well-being. So that's my condensed little definition of that. So 1, we have to be aware. 2, we have to manage those skills, and then this is all relational related with self and then well-being. So our awareness is like, okay, here's mindfulness, that's being in the present without judgment, finding and identifying secondary emotions in self and others. That's the awareness part. Then managing the relationship skill set is empathy and active listening and assertive behavior and conflict reduction and teamwork and self-control and compassion, stress management. So chemical, physical, and emotional. Those are all how we manage a relationship: chemically, physically, and emotionally. So in our well-being, if we want to be more emotional intelligent, you're going to have a better immune system. This is all research. Reduce stress. You're going to have more harmony and love, and you're going to be more self-confidence, and you're going to have boundaries and goals. People that have well-being with emotional intelligence have all those things, and more. There's lots of things. So it's it's like, oh, that sounds really good. I'm going to have a better immune system. I'm not going to have as much stress, and wow, I'm going to have more harmony inside my body, my soul, in my relationships. I mean, this is too good to be true, right? So people who possess a high degree of emotional intelligence know themselves very well and are also able to sense the emotion of others. That's the point of empathy. They are resilient, optimistic. There's lots of things that's there in the research of researching people that have emotional intelligence. Remember, that's managing, that's finding awareness, that's a skill set. And by the way, if you want to find out if you're emotionally intelligent or how much you really are to start off with, and like where your goal is. So if I'm working with someone we're working on emotional intelligence, we're getting them emotionally balanced, then I can say, here's a little quiz at the beginning, and here's what you are in 6 months. Now that's in the handouts that I sent Heather. So if you want that little quiz, make sure you get that, and you can take that and you can give it to your kids, and you can take it together as a family and say, we need to be more emotional aware, because man, we can have better immune system, and we can actively listen to each other better. We can reduce conflict. We're more compassionate. We have stress management. So if any of those need to be dealt with in your life, then this is one way to start. So the EI, which is the emotional intelligence, and then the IQ test, emotional, so there's been research on that. Daniel Goleman of, mindful meditation, so mindfulness and then meditation, has been discovered to foster the ability to inhabit those very quick emotional impulses. So, and people tend to become more emotionally intelligent as they age. So remember that it's okay. As you age and mature, you actually become more emotional intelligent. Your brain stops developing at 26. Next month for my parenting class, I'm doing Brainstorm by Dan Siegel. He's next to Dan Goleman for me. They're just really good researchers, next to John Gottman. He's the top of the list though. So researchers have found that even more than IQ, your emotional awareness and abilities to handle feelings will determine our success and happiness in all walks of life, including family relationships. That's a quote from John Gottman. So the thing is I don't need to be smart. Yay! I don't need an IQ, and I don't have one that's like up there. I'm sure I don't, but I sure have worked on emotional awareness over the years, and going to school and going through difficult things. I think that's what Daniel Goleman was talking about. When people mature in age, we tend to be more emotionally intelligent because we've been through more emotion. We've handled more emotion. We've had more loss and grief and trauma. So the more we have those emotions, and especially trauma, we hopefully become more intelligent with that. So the test here is myframeworks.org/test my EQ. That's the little on this. If you want to write that down, you can go and take that test. And I've also put it in. I think that one is the one that's in the handouts. So that's that. I'll leave that if you're writing that down. Myframeworks.org, test my EQ. Your emotional intelligence. You're gonna, okay. So this, you've seen, this is my favorite thing. And I'm sure you've seen this slide before in almost every webinar I do, and every class I teach, and my Thinking Errors class that I teach for my other job a couple times a month. This is my slide. So, you know, thinking errors are an issue because our brain starts with thought, then we have a feeling, then we have a behavior because of it. So this is really important to understand it with everything, because here's what we're talking about today is feelings and emotion. So first we have a thought that comes in, that's where we self-talk and have physical reaction to that thought, because our feelings send us into our either cortisol or calm, you know, so either our fight or flight sometimes, or so that turns us right into a behavior of what we're going to do about that feeling. So we have to understand that this is how the brain works. Our frontal lobes is where we self-talk and physical response, and our reward system and reasoning and organizing and emotion and logic. There's two lobes up here, and one's emotion, one's logic. So we're going to talk about emotion today. Here's emotion, here's logic. But wise mind, dialectical behavioral term there, is those two together. So we need to have those two together. No matter what, we can be emotionally intelligent, but if we don't have logic, if we are using all of our frontal lobe just for emotion and blocking out logic, that's a thinking error. That's number 4 on my thinking error list. But if we only use logic and we're not emotionally intelligent and we block out the emotion and only use logic, that's a thinking error. Now, I can go into genders on that. You know, in general, men use their, you know, logical brain, women use their emotional brain, and we want those together. So I'm working with a couple and working with men or women, you know, it's like we're getting more emotional intelligent over here, and we're getting more logical with emotion over here. So we're using both. So that's just a little bit of that. So emotion is 4th of our balance. So here's our balance. This is my other, you know, slide that I use all the time, because this is so important to know where your balance is. So the next thing is, where am I out of balance? If your emotional spiritual is put into one section, Covey and other people put it separate, but some people put together. So I put physical, mental, social, and emotional spiritual is in one balance. So 4th of your balance is emotion. So you have to be emotional, intelligent, grounded, or connected. If you feel like you're not, and you're using only logic, or you're blocking out these frontal lobes altogether, and you're not using emotion or logic, then you're going to be in your fight, flight, or freeze most of the time, which is midbrain, which is pretty exhausting, which is burnout, which is all those things, which is PTSD, which is generalized anxiety disorder, which is you're just back here. And that doesn't work. It's exhausting. So, you know, look at your balance. Like I say in almost every webinar, see where you're out of balance and start there. Now, if you're physically really out of balance, I'm going to have to say it here. If you're physically out of balance, you can't get emotional and social and mentally balanced until that physical is under control. So look at my other webinars of burnout, of time management, of taking care of your mental health. You can Google that on the YouTube channel, and it comes up. So taking care of your mental health during COVID. So sleep, diet, and exercise has to be in there first before you can be emotionally regulated, right? Or grounded or connected. Because if you're exhausted and your diet and your sleep and your exercise is off, then it's really difficult to go into the other ones. So this is one of my handouts. This is a wheel that I've made years and years and years ago it's my own wheel. It's my own emotional handout of primary emotions, secondary emotions, and then what's really going on. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. So this is just, I hand this out in therapy all the time of like, so we can visually see it. There's just some primary emotions here. Shame is a primary emotion. A lot of people don't understand that. Happy, mad, sad, scared. So, and surprise, and just those primary emotions, 0 to 10, most kids can totally pick out 5 or 6 or 7 primary emotions from the day for sure. That's awesome. But we want to go into secondary emotions, what's really going on. And this is why I don't have why am I having this emotion on this chart. It doesn't say why, it says what's going on. So what's going on is just this. I don't know why a lot of times. Why we just have an overwhelming feeling of sorrow or guilt or frustration, and sometimes you can pinpoint that, or you just feel content. There's no reason to go into the whys. That causes some severe logical, you're going into the logical part. We don't know why. It's just what's going on. So when you emotionally coach, it's like, hey, what's going on? It's not, why are you throwing a fit right now? Stop it. Why are you crying? What is wrong with you? It's what's going on is this. It seems like you're really upset. What's going on? Do you know what's going on? It's coming from their body first. The physical reaction, remember, comes first, then the feelings. So the physical reaction, they're all mixed in together, but so primary, secondary. So when you see the outside, so the grief, loss, trauma, and powerless, so the outside of the wheel is what's really going on. So this is a tree analogy. So the leafy issues are the primary emotions. The trunk of the tree, and I have my tree over here that I've showed too, but are the secondary emotions. And what's really going on at the roots. So what's really going on is there's grief, loss, and trauma and powerless going on if you're on this side of the wheel. If you're in shame, mad, sad, scared. So what that means is you are having grief, loss, and trauma. There's relational trauma, there's developmental trauma, there's pre-trauma, post-trauma. I mean, there is just trauma. And I'm going to actually do a trauma class next month. So if anybody wants more on trauma, it needs to be out there. I love teaching on emotions and trauma because trauma is held in the body and emotion is held in the body as a memory in the body, not just the brain, in the body. So now powerless is one of my favorite words, and powerful. So powerless, power, opposite power. I like power more. I like power over my emotions. I want to have power over the feelings that I have. Okay, not always going to happen. You just have to say, well, what's going on? I feel powerless right now. So if you're in fight, flight, good luck with, you've already gone to that point. But I'm going to talk about regulation in a minute. But what happens is you have to understand that this is how I explain crisis. So if you're if you're in grief, loss, and trauma and powerless, and you're in all 4, excuse me, if you're in all 4, then guess what? That's called crisis. So that's how I define crisis in visualizing it to someone. So if you're in grief and loss and trauma, which pretty much since COVID, we can call COVID a loss, grief, and trauma. But if you're powerless in it and you have no power in the situation of something, that's where we're in crisis now. So we usually pull out of crisis within a certain amount of time, or after we go and say, okay, wait, I need a boundary around this crisis and I need to get myself out of this crisis. So how do I do that? Well, number 1 is boundaries. And I taught that class. I've had boundaries with parenting, and I have boundaries with toxic behavior. Last 2 weeks ago, And then the boundaries, parenting with boundaries, was several months ago. So they're all on YouTube. So if you get into a powerless situation, usually number one issue is that we don't have a boundary around that situation. So we need to set boundaries. So on the other side, when we have worth and higher purpose and understanding, wow, we feel understood. We have self-worth, self-value, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-concept. Those are all different things and different categories, but it's just worth, self-worth in a nutshell. And I have a higher purpose in my life in what I'm doing. I don't feel, I don't feel helpless, as much. But if you have power, you're on the other side. If you're powerless, you feel, anxious and heartbroken and hurt and guilty and hopeless and helpless and betrayed and frustrated and annoyed and jealous. Do you see all those are secondary emotions? That's what's really going on. So that's the handout real quick. So this is the example of primary emotion. I have a happy. Whoa, well, wait, what's really going on is I feel hopeful and I feel safe, because you can't feel happy usually if you're not safe. Oh, wait, I have worth, a higher purpose, and I feel understood. Now I'm going to teach a 5, habit 5 of Covey is seeking to understand first before you're understood. It's very important. So if you help someone feel understood, they're going to feel safe, and and then it goes backwards to, I feel happy or peaceful. So, and this is the cycle handout, and I'm going to go over 1 and 2 today. There's just so much. So in the emotional intelligence number 2, I'm going to go over 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotional regulation, but that's way later. That's after you observe and experience. So today is going to be, how in the world do we just observe, and how do we experience an emotion? That is actually really, really tough, because it's uncomfortable to have a strong emotion sometimes. And then accepting it. With most of my clients, we work on 1 and 2 for quite a while. And then accepting it with no judgment and boundaries around that emotion and that value, that's tough. That's later, and allowing time. So that's next month. You'll be able to watch that to get the rest of this. But there's so much in just observing and experiencing emotion and getting emotional intelligent in that, knowing what's going on first. So knowing what secondary emotion you're having. So number 1, your emotional and spiritual balance is observing. So it's not just observing through your eyes. So I have this little observant little eye over here. It's not observing through your eyes, but when you are coaching and you're in a team meeting and you're at work and you want to be a team player, you have to observe through your eyes for sure. And then you're going to observe through, reading your face, someone's face and body, also. And that's how you're doing it through visual, right? But for you've got to observe in inside the body. So you're just noting a mental and a physical feeling. So, wow, I'm stopped breathing, or I'm noting this mental fogginess or tunnel vision, or I'm sweating, or, oh, what's happening? Well, your adrenal gland just kicked in and sent cortisol to your brain that said, do something, and you're in your fight or flight. If you're already to that physiological feeling of tunnel vision, shaking, sweating, then you're in a physiological state of adrenal. So labeling your primary and secondary. Okay. So this is super important. So like I said, a 10-year-old, 8-year-old and under should be able to find 10 primary emotions, those basic emotions, or a couple, 6 or 7 of them, and that's all there is. And then your secondary emotion, they can say, oh, I'm really frustrated right now. Yeah, they can totally. I've had 5 or 6-year-olds in my office that just blow me away, that are so smart in their emotions. They say emotions that their parents have never heard of before. I feel free. I feel I just, I feel this way when this is happening. I'm right in front of their parents. My parents have fought a lot this month since I've seen you. And how does that make me feel? Well, it makes me feel, they would say something like, it just makes me feel gloomy. Well, oh my gosh, gloomy? Huh. Well, when do you not feel, when I feel free is the opposite. So when I feel gloomy, I don't feel free. I feel heavy. That was one of my clients yesterday. One of her 5 emotions that she was doing with an imagery was heavy. I thought, what an awesome secondary emotion, that she is in her mental and physical body. She feels heavy. I feel heavy. That's an emotion, but it's also a physiological feeling, right? Like your body just is drained. So you've got to label them and find them. And then I say, so this is a daily thing. This is, every couple days, or when you have a strong emotion or not, but it's just strong. So 10 is strong. So you put a number next to that primary, secondary emotion. So teach your kids or yourself to say, wow, what number am I at? How heavy did I feel? Well, I felt like a 9 out of 10. That's strong. So I always do 1 to 10, 10 being really strong emotion. That's it. So it's like, and you can be a strong content or peaceful or happy. So I felt 9 most of the day today with just, I had just good flow, and I just felt peaceful. Cool. Okay. So this is where we observe if we're going into fight or flight or freeze. Like I said at the beginning, if you're sweating and tunnel vision and your heart rate's going, you got to go, oh my gosh, I'm in fight or flight, and I don't need to save my own life right now. So this person or this situation or that, sent me into fight or flight. Hopefully you're still in your frontal lobes at this point, and you can self-talk and you're not completely at an 8, 9, or 10. Once you get to an 8, 9, or 10, like I said, good luck in self-talking. You're not up here anymore. You are in the midbrain with fight or flight. I'm going to die right now. And your body tells you that. And so you start reserving stuff. And that's why we have a heart rate and a cortisol sent to our body, so we can have the energy to fight it or flee, or we completely shut down and go into, it's called collapse. And that's what the body keeps score by, I can't say his name, Kolk. It's in the back of the PowerPoint, but he has 3 levels of safety that's called from the automatic nervous system that happens. So when the automatic nervous system and the adrenal gland starts happening, that's the nervous system that sends us into fight or flight or freeze. When we're not self-talking anymore, there's 3 levels of that. You're threatened, so the vagus nerve has to come in and save that. You go into fight or flight, and number 3 is freeze. You collapse. So you either fight or flight, you feel threatened, you do a threatening thing, and it's, your awareness is now going, oh, I'm threatened. So you fight or flight, and then freeze is completely collapse. And that's like body signals that withdrawal and defeat. Your body goes into defeat and you freeze. So this is really important with emotions, because it's an emotion that sends us into the behavior of fight, flight, or freeze. So we have a thought that comes in, oh, I'm threatened. Oh, wait, I'm going to fight, flight, or freeze. And then that's the behavior, because you're having a feeling of I feel unsafe. That's all that is. And also, which is the fight, flight, or freeze, it's the fear response system, right? So it's the fear response or stress response. So it's a fear. So the only emotion here is fear. I feel fearful. And so the other one is love. So in another book of Beyond Consequences, she says there's 2 emotions that we have behavior from: fear or love. So when your child is throwing a fit and they're in their fight, flight, or they freeze and completely collapse, they're in their fear response brain, and you will not reason with them, organize with them, do let's, just basically reason. They're not going to be able to reason. You can't teach them anything, organize their brain, organize their behavior. It's impossible. You got to wait till after they come out of that again. So that's just parenting stuff. But how do we record and track this? Well, there's lots of ways. I have little kid charts that you can record, like that says, oh, 30 days, I slept, this is the emotion I had, and I, ate breakfast every day. Whatever you want to record. So it's just a number and a secondary emotion, hopefully. It's frustrated. I was an 8 all day with frustration. I was just fearful. I was scared. So you just record and track. That's how you can see where you're at. If we don't know where we're at, just like time management, we don't know where we're at of balance. We don't know where to start, where to end. So next one, the emotional spiritual balance, step 2. So how to experience it. So the only way you can learn how to experience the emotion is through all your 5 senses. So if your mouth is dry, you're gonna have a different taste. If you're hearing something, you see something, you smell something, and you touch something. So if you want to be present, that's mindfulness. That's a whole other class. There's just, it's just a dialectical behavior term again of mindfulness, of like being present without judgment is where we have to be. So it's like, okay, so stuffers turn into volcanoes. So stuffing it, blocking it doesn't work. So what Brene Brown research in emotions and shame, her 20 years of research now shows that thousands of people have learned how to stuff and shame, which is judgment, their emotions, of course, because they weren't emotionally coached and they were shame parented, or teacher said, shut up and stop it, and why are you acting like that, and go back outside. And those experiences taught us to shut your emotion off, and you'd almost get in trouble if you did have emotion. That's just some work that is in the root issue, if you need to do some work around that, because that's the unlearning part of this. We have to unlearn what this emotion meant in your childhood, in your family of origin, in your culture, in shame resilience. So you have to be a witness to it. How do, my question is, we can maybe chat this. Like, how have you been a witness to your emotion or someone else's? Like, what do you do to be a witness? This is in the handouts too. I printed the whole thing off. So there's an emotional intelligence exercise thing that I found that's so awesome. And it just goes through, and it's a PDF, and so it's free, and I just love it. And there's just some exercises in here that, I can do with clients, or you can do with yourself. So what happens is the question is, how do we be a witness to it with our own emotion or someone else's? Well, so basically you can do the body detector, the face detector, and read people and read your own. So it's just basically reading your emotion. So being a witness to it is being present and reading it. So head, shoulders, chest, arms, hands, legs. So if you're scoring, this is a little exercise on this handout. You can score those. Once again, 1 to 10, 10 being very strong. My hands feel tight. My legs are twitching. My shoulders are tense. My head, and then face. You have to be a witness to that. And as you're mirroring someone, or as you look in the mirror, or as you're looking at your child or someone in a meeting, you look at their face, right? You look at their eyes, their eyelids, their eyebrows, their nostrils, their mouth, and their lips, and then you can see an emotion. And then in the exercise on this PDF, it says, okay, now write down your numbers, and then here's the emotion behind it. So they have like, here's the emotional list: anger, you'll see, outrage, irritability, hostility, resentment. In sadness, you'll see grief and sorrow and gloom. I mean, you can see this in someone's face, in despair and loneliness. I mean, if someone's crying on their face, is there, You just be a witness to that. And that's how you self and emotional coach someone else. That's how you emotionally coach. You coach yourself and go, oh, for example, I'll tell a story because I needed story time. I'm a storyteller. So I teach group, a substance abuse group, and other groups, and most of the time they're court ordered. And so these court ordered groups are awesome people and clients, and they're very open to a growth mindset and learning, honestly. And I had a group member that got a little hostile in the group, and I've never had that happen before for a really, really long time, So I started feeling red, and I started feeling very like unsafe, and and I get red. I was like, and so I was like, okay. And we were talking about I was teaching mindfulness. I was teaching about mindfulness. So I stopped and I was like, okay, am I right? And this is in Zoom because we're not seeing face to face in Salt Lake still. And so I was teaching this in a class just like this. And it's like, it's an hour-long class. And it's like, okay, we're going to be a witness to this. And how is everyone else feeling? And let's be in the moment right now. And I sat in it. And you have to stop and just sit in it. And it's uncomfortable. I didn't discount it. I didn't block it. I didn't ignore it. I sat in it and I made everyone else sit in my emotion and theirs, right? We sat in it together and go, wow, that was really hostile. The comment that was made in group was extremely unacceptable. And so it's like, oh, I feel a little irritable. That person was really irritable. What is going on? And there was anger and sadness and fear, and it wasn't safe. And then I was in disgust, a little contempt, and so that distaste in my mouth was like, okay, that was uncomfortable. And so what I teach people how to do is sit in it and don't ignore it. Now, sometimes you have to fake it because you're sitting in a meeting or you're with your kid, and you can do this later. You can sit in it later a little bit, but make sure you go back to it. And make sure you go back to it with your child or your spouse or your partner, because it's so important to go back to it. Like, wow, yesterday when we talked, I really felt this way. And now that I'm in a different, mindset, and I'm up here and I can reason and organize my feelings, I can talk about it now. So you have to observe your five senses, what you're smelling, seeing, tasting. There's no shame. All emotions are signs. That's what I usually, is like on this wheel. It's like all emotions are just signs. They're all good. Do not tell a child or someone else that they can't be angry. Anger is not a good emotion. There's no good or bad here. That's the biggest key to understanding emotional intelligence. So anybody can be angry. Anger is good. It sends cortisol to us. It tells us something's wrong. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person at the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, in the right way, it kind of goes along with my compassion one that is right here that I have sitting here on my desk. It's like connection with the right person at the right time about the right issue is what compassion is. So it's kind of the same thing. That was because that's from Brené Brown, of like, fear and shame can't tolerate connection. So fear is anger. So take that back. Anger is this secondary emotion. I use mad as a primary. Anger is a secondary. Fear is a secondary of mad. It's a fear-based emotion. So when your kids are angry, we tend to be like, you don't need to be angry over this. But really, they're fear-based. Remember, the only two emotions that are activating the behavior is fear or love. So if they're being angry and throwing a fit about getting their shoes on and getting in the car, then it's a fear of change. It's a fear of, so it seems like change is really hard for you. Change is really hard for you to leave the house and go to this place, or you weren't happy about this or this or this. So that's different. A child is allowed to be angry. Now here's my bar, and here's everybody's bar up here. You can't hurt yourself or others, because that's the law. That's how I define abuse. You can't harm yourself or others. So if you're going to harm yourself or others, we got a problem. So that's the thing, is in the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, get angry, but at the right degree. That's within everybody's power. It's not easy. Not easy at all. Especially if you tend to be a 5 to 10 in 10 seconds. Like, I taught anger management groups for years, and then I taught domestic violence groups. These are for the offenders. And then I still teach anger management every single month to people that, court ordered, or just that people that or say, I have a problem with anger. I go from 5 to 10 in like seconds. So it's like, okay, that's not the right way to get angry. That just means that you're not regulating that and going, oh wait, here's my power. I have power over this, but it's not easy. So another quote, empathy versus sympathy. Okay, so Brene Brown, she's all referenced in the back of this, so don't worry. All of her books are there too. So, but this is a YouTube little video. It's 3 minutes long, and for the love, show it to your children. Show it to yourself. Show it to somebody. It is a 3-minute video that explains the difference between empathy and sympathy. This is where we're going to get really emotional intelligent. If we understand what empathy really is. Empathy is empathizing with the emotion, not the event. So this is there's a couple statements that we've learned from past generations maybe that I despise. I'm not going to say hate, that I just despise. So it's like, you got to walk in somebody's shoes to get it. So if we were having a discussion, which I like more in classes, what would that mean to you? I mean, do you got to walk in somebody's shoes? And I teach this all the time, and I'm like, I have a lot of shoes. I love my shoes. I have a little collection. It's not little. But do you have to walk in all my shoes? All my shoes that are downstairs in my closet, since I'm working from home, I'm like, oh, I can just visualize my shoes. And I'm like, man, you don't want to walk in all my shoes. I don't want to walk in all my shoes. I have some heels, or whatever, but I love my boots. I love, all those shoes. Do you have to walk in somebody's shoes to have empathy? It's not about the event. So does that mean if I have to walk in somebody's shoes, does that mean I have to be in their event, in their life? Absolutely not. Because every event that every single person on this planet has is not the same, is not the same. It never will be, and it never has been, but the emotion is the same. So back to the emotional wheel. If I had loss, grief, and trauma, and I felt powerless in a situation, then we've all had those emotions. We've all had shame. Brene Brown says, of course. So shame, different levels. So the example I give is, if my mom died when I was 14 of cancer and your mom died of cancer when you were 45, is it the same event? It is absolutely not the same event, but it's the exact same emotion, maybe different levels in a little different way, but it's the same emotion of loss, grief, and powerless, and very traumatic. So it's like, here's a developmental traumatic. I had trauma, developmental trauma, because my parent died when I was 14 in my developmental years. That's developmental trauma. And then when you're 45, it's like, yeah, well, gosh, grandma's not going to be around for the grandkids. And so it's different, but it's still loss, grief, and trauma. That's empathy. Sympathy is, oh, you poor thing. So, oh, bless your heart. Oh, that screaming baby in the store. Yeah, it sucks to be you. That's what we've taught our kids how to do, because you can't bully and have empathy at the same time. You can't shame someone and have empathy at the same time. And if I was in a classroom, that would be on the board, big. We cannot have shame and empathy at the same time. So that's a little video about that. We empathize with the emotion. We have to get in someone's space. That's all. It's space. So when you get to a place where you can understand that love and belonging, your worthlessness is a birthright and not something you have to earn. Anything is possible. That's Brene Brown's quote. I love that one. I love all of, like, there's so many. Okay, so emotional coaching. So this is Gottman. He wrote a book, How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child. It's in my top 5. And my top 5 are usually right here on my desk all the time, but my books are scattered all over. But Brene Brown's Gifts of Imperfection, by the way, going backwards to that, Gifts of Imperfection is in my top 5. This is in my top 5, this book. So he teaches, there's one chapter that I only go over. The whole book is amazing, but I go over the 5 steps of emotional coaching. So this is for you. The first step of emotional coaching is figuring out what you're feeling so you can help your child or someone else figure out what they're feeling. But much of today's popular advice ignores the world of emotion. We totally skip over this. We totally do as a world. Instead, it relies on child rearing theories that address the child's behavior. So please don't step over the thought and the feeling, right? In that first PowerPoint. It's the thought and the feeling. Well, you must have had a thought that said, oh, I'm scared right now. And then the feeling is, wow, I'm terrified now. And then the behavior is, I'm going to scream and yell at somebody else because I'm scared, because it's a fear response brain. Remember, it's from fear that behavior is happening, if that's the scenario. So we've got to stop going straight to the behavior. So we discard the feelings and the underlying issue. It's not the behavior, it's the feeling. So it's like, wow, it seems like you're really scared right now because you're in your fear response brain. I mean, I don't know how many parents are talking like that, but that's what you know, when I was a foster parent for 10 years, I mean, I think I did pretty well with the training that I got. That was before I became a therapist. That was my other life. And then, it's like I turned and went into school after, because of foster care system. That's another story for another day. But here's the little 5 steps of emotional coaching. I don't go into it because, like I said, there's a whole webinar on it. So becoming aware of your emotions and all emotions, just becoming aware, recognizing the opportunity for teaching and intimacy and trust building. So there's lots of research on, if you're emotionally intelligent, you have better relationships. And that's the point of, you have stronger, trusting relationships. And so that's where you teach and build trust. You listen, validate, and reflect. And then you coach the child to label how they feel. And then 5 is my favorite one. It's set limits and problem solve. That's, you're just going to have to read the book and look at the other PowerPoint, but that's the basic. Okay. So here's the references. I'm going to leave this up for a minute. So you can look at it right now if you want, but you're going to get this PowerPoint and you can go through it. So a couple things on this that I wanted to talk about that are open right here. So the last one on here is Solon and Kress is how, I don't know how to say their last name, but I ordered this. Don't let your emotions run your life for your child, because doing virtual therapy is hard play therapy with kids. And so this is a DBT, a Dialectical Behavioral Therapy workbook. And so I thought, I'm going to order, I think it was like $16. I don't mind it at all. I really, I'm like, it's all collaborative. It's all perfect. So I love easy understanding and how people write books. So there's 37 activities for kids in here on emotions. And this is just so good for anybody. I want, if anybody's like, oh, I'm going to, of course it's like kids, it's geared for kids, but my gosh, it's so, situation, feeling, intensity game. This one's I marked because it's like planning ahead for big feelings. Okay. Plan ahead for big feelings. What a better way to do this for the next month, please, before your kids go back to school. For you, like, plan ahead for big feelings. We're having really big feelings about school and masks and corona, and we're having very big debates, and we're having lots of anger and irritability. and you wonder why we're burned out, because that's cortisol. That is burnout. That's not habitual burnout yet. It's not chronic burnout. It's burnout. It's in the middle of the 5 steps of burnout, but we're in burnout because we've been going on like this for 5 months. So this is so crucial. Oh, so let's plan ahead for big feelings, okay? So you plan. So of course it's called plan. P, picture. L, list. A, actions. And N, it's easy to put it into now. So N is now. So plan. So it's like for you, worrying about things that not going well is like practicing and rehearsing for things not to go well. Isn't that what we do? So we rehearse, and this is from the same concept from other books I'm reading right now. So it's like, here's the concept is let's rehearse the future. Why are we fortune telling? Why do we rehearse the future of these big feelings? So we're rehearsing, practicing what's not going to go well. Now, that's okay to not discount that. You're not discounting that. You don't need to discount that. But you need to say, okay, what could go right? So we plan, right? And then we list imaginary things that we can feel control over. And then we have action. And then we have now. What's in the now? What can we do now to plan for big feelings? I loved it. I loved it. Okay. So we've got this, these little exercises. This is one of the handouts. And then this book that you can order. But and then I did put some kid stuff in there because like I said, most of us have kids. So there's some emotional and their thoughts and their sensations, like this little handout that kind of goes through, okay, I feel angry, anxious, or depressed. Now with that, just so I have to explain this, I don't love depressed and anxious. So if I feel nervous or I feel anxious, you can have a feeling of anxious, but if I'm anxiety is not a feeling, it's a disorder. If you have a disorder of anxiety, and depression is that I feel sad is the emotion, not I feel depressed. Okay, so it's kind of, so that one I don't love depressed as an emotion. So and then the wheel, and then the cycle. So this is my own cycle of how we go through the steps of just being emotional. So we're going to go over 3 and 4 and 5 next time. And so let's do some questions. We're out of time.
Okay, the first is some comments. So someone said, will you be sending out the quiz that you're speaking of?
So I sent that, yes, to you, Heather, and there's a link, like an actually PDF of the little quiz that you can take to see if you're emotionally intelligent and how emotionally intelligent you are. Then you can start from there. Yes, the quiz is in those handouts.
Okay. And then someone just had a comment and said, when I'm having anxiety, I try to witness how hot I feel, how much I start to sweat, and how shallow my breathing is.
That's being in your body, that's being aware, and then you can hurry and label those things. So it's like, wow, if I'm at a 7 with anxiety, if those physiological symptoms, then you're at a 7. And an 8.5, you know that you're going to, go this far. A 10 is throwing up, panic attack, completely freezing, which is the collapse of the body, of the mind, of the, you're at collapse at 10. So you have to know what to do at a 7, so then you go kick into your thinking error, brain. That's not, the non-thinking error stories of like, okay, I'm okay. Wait, I'm not okay. No, you're not. You're at a 7. And then what does that look like? You call someone, you write, you mind dump, you go, you get up from where you are, you go into bigger spaces. Lots of those, do some mindful breathing is the first thing to get present, and your 5 senses. So smell. If you get smell going immediately, you will go back to a 5 if you're at a 7, 8, right? So yeah, that's just being aware first, so you can say, oh, well, then I need some coping, and that's the accept, and that's the next class, is how to get through those things. Even if you do get to a 10 and have a panic attack or an anxiety attack, 2 different things, then you do, but you'll know what a 10 looks like.
Okay, so the next one's, there's quite a few people asking if the handouts, if you're going to be sending those out, and then the video recordings. So yes, I'll be sending that recording out hopefully later this afternoon, if not tomorrow morning, depending on how quick it uploads to YouTube. And somebody did ask, can you share the location of where these videos are? And yes, so when I send the email, it'll be a direct link to this video, but you can just click on Blomquist Hill off that link on YouTube and it will take you there. Or you can just go to youtube.com and type in Blomquist Hill and it will pull up our page and then you can see all the videos. So it's pretty quick and easy and you're able to find it. Okay, and so then the next one is, another one that's kind of for me. So someone said, can you please remind me of others if we registered so we don't miss another one? So I can't send like a calendar invite out. I don't want to do that because a lot of people that join these webinars don't really want their coworkers knowing what they're coming to join. So, but that is why I send the access link email, and then I try to send a reminder email 15 minutes before the workshop. Today I was a little late, so I'll keep doing that, but I'm not going to be sending calendar invites just because it's kind of HIPAA. Okay, and then the next one is, let's see. Is emotional cycle, sorry, people are putting them in and I can't see it. Is the emotional cycle for yourself or for others or for both?
Yeah, it's for both. So of course, so if you're observing, to be really emotionally intelligent, you got to be able to observe other people that are in your world, that are in your space. That's empathy. So it's like, we've got to observe other people and say, wow, it seems like you're really upset right now. So let's talk about this after lunch. That's my, de-escalation and anger management. It seems like you're upset right now. So you've got to observe what you're feeling and what they are feeling somewhat. So it seems like you're upset or frustrated right now with me. So we're going to have to take a break because I don't need to be yelled at. So it's like experiencing it. You have to sit in someone's space. That's experiencing. That's also empathy. But then accepting it and self-talk, your own self-talk, that's happening all along here, by the way. And I'll talk about that next time. And then practicing it, if you're emotionally coached, unless we're all hermits, which we're not, we are connected beings. And so we're all connected. And so everybody we come in contact with, we should be able to do this back and forth with us first, then with them. So yeah, that's definitely the point of emotional intelligence. Is the next step is really understanding and being able to recognize other people's emotions. Does that make sense?
Okay, and then somebody said, how do we register for the second part of this training? So I'll get with Carol on a date and time, and it's not on our website yet, but I'll get the registration up, and then when I send this recording out, I'll also send the link to our website, and so I'll get that up by tomorrow so you can register for the second one.
Yeah, it'll be in August.
Okay, and then the last question, any tips on how we have a conversation with a coworker / boss who could use some work on this topic?
Oh, so this is super for that. This emotional intelligence exercise, there's one exercise in there of all on how to do it with a coworker. So it's like, which one is it? So anyways, and this was in the handouts that I sent out. So there's one in here, well, how to decode the speech, body, and face that I kind of already went over. But it talks about what to do when you're in a meeting or when you're with somebody. But that's the key thing, is it seems like, right, you're really frustrated with me right now. So I think it'd be better if we talked after lunch. That's a boundary. That's 5 classes that I teach in 2 sentences. So in this emotional intelligence exercise, positivepsychology.com, you can Google that if you want to just find it on your own, but it's about, it's about 20 pages long. So it just goes through several different exercises that you can do, but it's from positivepsychology.com, and it's called Emotional Intelligence Exercises. Anybody else?
Nope, that's it. So thank you everybody for being here, and sorry.
We'll be in touch, and we'll keep going.
Yeah, so So someone just said, can you call me about the relationship workshop? So if you have any questions, just email me with your phone number. Same if you want to schedule an appointment, I'm happy to help you and make personal recommendations. I just need you to email me to heather@blomquisttail.com with your phone number, and I will give you a call.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. So, just email me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. Bye.